Thank you very much. We have three groups of people that we want to thank and in relation to different institutions. Ying Xiao at University of Florida for the opportunity to see Huang Weikai's Disorder, the film that we're going to be discussing, at a conference on Chinese digital video documentary a couple of years ago, and Director Huang for corresponding with us since then. James Beasley, the English Graduate Organization at UNF, for allowing us to join the conference program as faculty in English and languages, literatures, and cultures, and present this draft of our collaboration. And the International Academic Forum Film Asia Conference in Osaka for giving us the opportunity to present this as a virtual presentation. So we have a camera just recording this part of our presentation. So we'll start with a quote from Huang Weikai from an interview from the Third Chinese Visual Festival. My film showed the absurdity of city life. The news you read every day is always more amazing than a novel or a movie. Sometimes we can't help asking whose city this is. We choose the cosmopolitan living lifestyle, while it brings us a lot of things that are unreasonable and unpredictable. Therefore, we need to reflect on it. So I'm just going to show you a trailer, 1 minute long, for Disorder. And Yongan can tell you the Chinese, proper pronunciation of the Chinese title.
Yeah, it's 现实是过去的未来. So it's today is the future of the yesterday.
So this reminded me of a passage from Michel de Certeau's The Practice of Everyday Life, in which he suggests that one can try another path, one can analyze the microbe-like, singular, and plural practices which an urbanistic system was supposed to administer or suppress, but which have outlived its decay, these multiform, resistant, tricky, and stubborn procedures that elude discipline without being outside the field in which it's exercised, and which should lead us to a theory of everyday practices, of lived space, of the disquieting familiarity of the city. So I'm just going to read this first part of the introduction. Huang Weikai's documentary film Disorder presents a Guangzhou caught on video in the middle of a critical stage in history in which both the state apparatus and urban infrastructure can barely keep up with the growth of the city. These trembling, poorly lit, low-resolution shots were taken at point blank by the people of Guangzhou, for a lack of a better term, to generalize its diverse group of informants who provided Huang with over 1,000 hours of footage, inspiring him to compose a kind of city symphony to string together the countless stories contained in the DV tapes of Guangzhou's amateur videographers. The film is then made up of a montage of snippets of events unraveling on streets and other public spaces, where a frustrated policeman tries to broker a deal between a taxi biker and his passenger in a dispute over a counterfeit note worth only a few dollars. Firefighters rush into a small alley and a few times to put out a resilient fire. A high-pressure torrent gushes through a fractured utility pipe and floods the entire block. Pigs run loose and play hide-and-seek games with their transporters, blocking the entire highway during rush hour, and so on. The film includes at least a dozen street dramas, apparently devoid of clear connections or similarities. The spectator is thus confronted with these real events in medias res and responds to the promise of these frontline DV cameras, but Huang mischievously removes all colors and circumstantial information from the footage, fragmenting and rearranging the video clips to accommodate very little creditable objective knowledge of Guangzhou. The realistic quality of the original footage thus gives way to a pastiche of surrealist and speculative images of urban life, floating around and morphing into each other in now black and white, grainy illustrations. After watching the film, critics and common audience members alike unanimously voiced their first and foremost impression of Huang's Guangzhou, a city full of bizarre occurrences where people had accepted a measure of absurdity in their lives. because the coherent discourse of urban life that people once took for granted as a symbol of modernization is breached and nullified by a sudden influx of things, of people and commodities. This double transformation of both the city itself and the footage of the city suggests Huang's awareness, after more than a year of exhaustive efforts to edit and remaster the footage, that in the end he's disinterested or unable to string together an organic or organized vision of a city symphony. Rather, the film only presents a collage of amateur videos recorded by a flaneur or a number of flaneurs who run into the breaking points of city life, by accident or by choice when they stroll on the street. It's a city life imbued with disorder and irrationality at first glance, sustained by nothing but the rhythm, the content of the information, and the allusion to emotion. In contrast, the videos produced by so-called public media, Huang successfully renders the public space an ephemeral and yet perennial stage, the whole city a mise-en-scène, empowering his audience with the necessity and possibility of disassociating the public space from the public or official discourse in the hope of walking in the streets, mobilizing other subtle, stubborn, embodied, resistant meanings, the meanings that are so far have largely been rejected and suppressed by the forward momentum of urbanization, which attempts to unilaterally construe a mirage of a great, bright future inhabited by urban dwellers of economic prosperity and material abundance. As a result, the common becomes a conundrum, and Guangzhou is shown as a lieu de mémoire, where the future is already buried in the past, since the now has multiple mooring points in the film's chaotic, dystopian present. As Huang states in the film's Chinese title, today is the future of yesterday. There are reason to believe that disorder may not be a symptom, but a solution to reconcile the incompatibility and the conflicts of interest in this formation of modernity, so as to imagine a break in the same way that Soetomo did in his Memories, that, quote, there is still the momentary possibility to remember the past and try to resituate it in the present, so that different modes of being and temporality will be able to coexist in the future. In other words, instead of investing itself in criticizing and eventually diminishing the largely negative impact of an overly rapid urbanization in an effort to restore memory of the past or to reconstruct a future with justice and order, the film commences and performs an allegorical analysis of contemporary urban life by setting free the paranoiac and irrational impulses running deep in the ego of the urbanites. So this paper continues Huang's initial effort. It first treats disorder as a rendezvous where individual events take place, which we're calling the occurrence, what Roland Barthes called the incident, falls into relation with one another, what we're calling the network, and constitute the general outlook of urban China as a source of amazement, knowledge, and imagination, or the locale. With its own methodology and exemplary instances, such a representation of disorder is capable of bringing out its alterity, located in a temporality different from the past. Using this analysis as a scaffold to reassess the utterances, actions, and images scattered across the cinematic enunciation, our study, on the one hand, connects the dots among the fragmented moments of disorder to better apprehend the surreal valence of everyday life in Guangzhou, and on the other hand, unearths the multiple temporalities in the events of disorder, which are studied in the following three aspects: as a collection of isolated private moments that resist the erosion and annihilation of history in an effort to remember what has taken place in reality, and as a network of signs aware of the possibility of referential aberration before the establishment of a clear and stable narrative, and finally as a locale where Orientalism prescribes what life in the Orient can and should possibly entail for the sake of being the silent and pedagogical other of Europe. To conclude this section, if what is correct that the psyche obtains pleasure via hallucinatory cathexis in memory of prior satisfaction, then the phantasmagoric quality of the events in the film can be nothing more than a hallucinatory cathexis, posing the problem of intersubjectivity. The pleasure lingering in the past and promised by the future is further deferred and denounced when people in the film are disappointed, rejected, frustrated, arrested, harassed, and or exhausted, while the desire to make reality out of pleasure becomes stronger than ever. Excavating the future illuminates both the false paths and authentic promises that these surreal events allude to. I'm sure Yongan's going to take next.
Okay, so when we prepared the presentation, Mika and I were talking about how can we present those ideas. Seems very complex, at least to me, when I sit here listening to Nick's reading. How are we going to present those ideas in a way that can be understood by audience who haven't watched this movie. So instead of reading aloud another 1 or 2 pages of our writing, I like to show you a few pictures so that you can see what do we mean when we discuss or analyze the event disorder as the occurrence, as a network, and also as a locale. So here you can read this by yourself. In China, whenever a truck rolls over by accident, for some reasons, the trucks, they tend to roll over on the highway because of either the poor construction or because of the driving skill of the drivers. Anyhow, so the villagers will come and they will plunder. And if you are interested in knowing more of this, you can just simply go to the Google and input rollover plus the in this case the fish or eggs or grapes, and you're gonna see a number of pictures showing you what happened when those commodities from the truck got rolled over or plundered by the villagers nearby. And then in this case it's a grape, in this case it's an orange, in this case it's a fish, and we certainly have more. I think this one is the some kind of like apple or fruit, and this one is the cabbage, and this one is the flowers. They were plundered by people, and this one I think it should be corn or rice, and this one is eggs again. So in Huang's movie, he showed us, I think in the trailer you saw like a few pigs running wild on the highway. It was because somehow the truck, the trailer was not able to contain those pigs in the right way, so the pig just ran away. And this one you can see from the background, it's the bird nest over here in the background, and this particular man, he grabbed a few umbrellas. I believe the news, the background of this event was I think some Chinese government organization is giving the umbrella for free to the citizens of Beijing, and then suddenly people realized this opportunity, so they were trying to get as many as possible. And this particular one, there is a monk standing in the middle of the picture, and then there are a few cops looking at the crowd over here. The background was there was a temple giving food out to the general public, and then suddenly people seized this opportunity again. They were trying to get a share. This one, people were trying to get a hand to the souvenirs or to the commodities for this organization. This one, people were trying to catch this snake for the sake of having a better luck in terms of the romantic relationship. And this one, you can see they didn't use a net, so they were not catching the fish. Rumor says that they found Asian coins in this creek, so they were trying to get as many as they can to dig into the creek bed. And this one, there was like 2 models. They were handing out some kind of souvenirs to the public, and then people suddenly just scatter around them and get out of control a little bit, and then they were all stretching their hands asking for the things, and then I think in the end it didn't end happy. Some kind of authority must be there and intervene the event. Anyway, so now you can see the Huang's movie, though you may not have watched it. You can see in his movie he has included about 30 little episodes of those surreal and absurd events that can be commonly observed in everyday life in Guangzhou. And to make the things worse or to make the things more interesting, he didn't show us the beginning or the end of those events. He simply just take us to the middle of the happening. So it's somehow like a dream. You didn't know how it started, and you did not know how it's going to come to the end. So how we can analyze this movie? So we took the step of considering those events as a symbol or as a sign, which have to be read amongst other signs in order to generate meaning. So we come to our next step, the disorder as the network. So you can read this. Obviously, Huang Huang attempts to lure the audience into thinking that aforementioned chaotic events, along with others found in the rest of the film, are no more than a random hodgepodge stitched together by the somewhat whimsical choices of the director. In doing so, he encourages viewers to let go of the logic and grammar of the first disorder, i.e. the absurdity and irrationality residing in the event themselves, and surrender to the secondary disorderness he creates, including the fragmented images, the absence of referential value, the defamiliarization of the hustle and bustle of daily life, the non-linear juxtaposition of truncated events, and more importantly, the insolvability or interminability of events themselves. So the visual statement made by the flanner eyewitness of the real events disconnects the signs from their reference. Huang's incision into Guangzhou becomes so deep that no textual grounding in reality is able to contain the semiotic overflow. And then you can see the first configuration when we consider this as a network. So we come to the step of considering the signs. They can form either a metaphorical or metonymic relation. So the first configuration asks for the resistance to the illusion of progress toward the pleasure by turning down the belief that the rosy future may eventually come. So disorder is the perpetual maladaptation to a hostile environment, while the second configuration reminds us the fact that the consumption demands people to constantly act out in the process whereby consumers are producing and being produced by the abstraction of labor. So disorder is the symptom of the mass consumption in the late capitalism. And then finally, the disorder as a locale, you can see why we consider, because if you zoom out, if you consider Guangzhou as the place in an oriental world, and whatever happened there has a certain authority or surrealism, because it has been prescribed by Orientalism that we are all familiar with. So you can see that this casts the whole metropolis with an idiosyncratic veneer of Orientalism, since the specificity of location now gives way to what is collectively known as Guangzhou. And in the film, actually, you can see part of the images may tell you some information about the location, but the director certainly, he doesn't want to present the location explicitly to the audience. And then this film adds its small share to the knowledge base of Orientalism. The strange stuff that you saw in the picture and also in the trailer, occupies this locale. Be the people, the things, their relations, or their behaviors, reassures the audience the actual existence of a different and difficult Oriental world. So here, Huang is both the informant and also the presenter of the Orientalist Guangzhou by collecting those footages and editing them into the certain way, so that you see it's the manifestation of disorder in his film. And now you can see China and the rest of the world, where you can find multiple pairs to see this opposition between the East and the West, the Orient and Occident, etc., etc. And Huang has done a great job of seeing this, of presenting this type of opposition between what we think the modernity should be and what the modernity is or is observed in China. So here I'd like to show you three casual writing on China, from a different point of history, to demonstrate how the Orientalism has prescribed the way the movie can be presented to the audience. So one is from an Englishman in the 19th century, another is from an American woman in the 20th century, and then the last one is from an American businessman who published on Kindle, so obviously the 21st century. And this one is from Thomas de Quincey, and he was among the first group of Westerners who use opium and other drugs to stimulate their creativity. So he wrote after he took maybe enough dose or overdose of opium, and he suddenly had this mirage or hallucination that in China, he said, like, over and above what is has been common with the rest of South Asian, I'm terrified by the modes of life, by the manner, and by the barrier of utter abhorrence, and the want of sympathy placed between us by feelings deeper than I can analyze. So he basically, though he had never been to China, so he basically, after taking some opium, he started to imagine himself living in China, and he had this unimaginable horror, which the dreams of the Oriental imagery and mythological tortures impressed upon him. So this one you can see in the early 19th century, though people have never been traveled to China, they start to have this horror image or horrible stereotypical views about what life could be in China. And then when we come to the 20th century, in the early part of the 20th century, I think this article was written in either 1920s or 1910s, when a American poet went to China, and she stayed there for maybe a half year, and then she composed this poetry and published her poetry book called Profiles from China. And then this one is screen, so you can read this by yourself. It's about a street-corner outhouse that people do their things, and you can see this nice reference to the Confucius, because like ancient time, suddenly you see a Chinese middle-aged man, sitting in the toilet, and you can actually see his face. Wow, this one is more outrageous. I think this is from Kindle. I just recently purchased from Amazon, and it's written by someone who have been living in China and doing business in China for a while, and then he just shared us a little of his experience. One of his colleagues, I think, from this writing, this person might be himself. He just add another layer to hide his embarrassment. So he described this whole event in a very graphic way. So I think you can now have a better idea of like what kind of life life in China is portrayed and understood by people in the other part of the Pacific. Yeah. So I think now it comes to the conclusion.
So very briefly, and again, it's still kind of a work in progress, but I'll just read our conclusion. So disorder poses a challenge. So even though we're giving sort of evidence of how Huang might be a kind of auto-orientalist, or this might appeal to certain kind of orientalist images of China as disorderly, uncivilized, etc. Nonetheless, disorder poses a kind of challenge to the very content and significance of modernity as prescribed by the West, as it stands on ground considerably different from the predecessors, who presented the Orient only after it had been tamed and deemed tameable in the genealogy of social development mandated by the West. The ambition to rationalize the reason behind the occurrence of a single anomaly, the confidence to gather and connect these gratuitous exceptions to form a unifying structure, and even the telescopic observation that discloses and fixes the Oriental in focus, have been largely repressed by a past that frequently haunts contemporary life whenever the opportunity presents itself. Trying to break itself free from the temporalization of Western discourses and the movement of history from an age when the West was supposedly the only keeper of historical time, disorder contributes to the making of moments of history. In returning, they are no longer quite life, yet not death, like shells on the shore when the sea of living memory has receded. Only with this embodiment of half-dead specters can disorder resist and possibly subvert the totalizing power of the symbolic order. In other words, the present produces and promulgates an order to be recognized and followed, while the past retains a reservoir of speculations in which this order can be rendered invalid and irrelevant. People in the community collectively draw inspiration from this reservoir in order to acquire and affirm their identity, one that is elliptical to the ghostly center of modernity. And here's some of our works cited here. Thank you.